cases in Nigeria, now 24,567 as NCDC announces 490 new cases.
Presidency reacts to criticisms concerning recent APC NEC meeting at the Villa.
Military destroys Boko Haram logistics base in Borno State. Neutralize more terrorists.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the management of political parties.
Political parties play a crucial role in the democratic process of any country as organized platforms for seeking political power.
That's right, Kieran, and parties are guided usually by their professed ideologies and constitutions to select candidates to stand for elections, conduct election campaigns, and mobilize voters for voting, and of course monitor the progress of their elected representatives through well-structured key performance indicators.
And political parties are actually meant to link citizens and the government, serving as a bridge by which people can have a voice in how they are governed.
However, in the quest for acquisition of political power by political parties, there's always, as it were, a tussle between vested interests of godfathers and the will of the majority of members of a political party, such as we have seen in Nigeria.
And that's all we've seen in this country for the past 3 decades. Now, this often takes a huge toll on internal party democracy, as the ideology and constitution of a party are often set aside to pave way for vested interests, as you mentioned earlier, Kingsley.
And by the way, Kyria, now forms of mismanagement and abuse of power within political parties have strong negative impact on citizens' perception of not just the political system, but also on the legitimacy of political parties themselves.
Of course, sustaining legitimacy and goodwill among the electorate is a huge task that should not be sacrificed on the altar of irresponsibility. Hence, it behoves on all parties to continuously improve their party management and adapt to global best practices in party management to continuously guarantee good governance.
Well, invariably, clear, attempts to subvert the party's constitution and the will of the people by way of vested interests of money bags or godfathers could spell disaster for a political party, most especially in more mature democracies.
In Nigeria here, everybody is a politician. And they tell you, look, this other man is not a politician, I am a politician. Then what qualifies you to be a politician? It's just because the person in question does not play the game the way you do, or does not understand local politics the way you do. Otherwise, people who read political science should have been declared politicians only,
Like yourself.
Exactly. I'm glad you mentioned organized crimes, Kingsley, because here in Nigeria, who gets what in political parties is decided by the money bags and the godfathers.
Of course, Kerry, and that reduces politics sometimes to just willing and dealing. And we have seen over time that such trend takes a huge toll on the quality of governance by elected representatives who feel heavily obliged to their financiers at the expense of the people and good governance.
And of course, this has generated intra-party squabbles that distract political office holders and even affect the chances of success of political parties during elections.
Well, questions to ask will include the following. How should political parties be structured and better managed in Nigeria? How can they deal with internal conflicts? And what should be done to prevent or otherwise eliminate corruption in political parties? These and other questions arise in relation to our topic of discussion today, which is the management of political parties. I'm Kingsley Osadolo, welcoming you to today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you as always live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're here from the nation's capital, Abuja.
And I'm Kieran Umayo. Many thanks for joining us on the show this morning. And as usual, we have to begin with the morning news But of course, in the process of delivering today's package, we're going to bring you newspaper review, business news, and of course others as much as time can allow us to take. But for now, we have Nolin Ebelame for the Good Morning News.
Good morning, Kieran and Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the news. As at 11:28 p.m. yesterday, 490 new cases of COVID-19 were announced by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, bringing the total number of confirmed cases in the country to 24,567. In the breakdown, Lagos has 118, Delta 84, Ebonyi 68, the FCT has 56, Plateau has 39, Edo 29, Katsina 21, Imo 13, Ondo 12, Adamawa 11, and 8 each in Osun and Ogun states. Rivers has 6 new cases. Kano has 5, with 3 new cases each in Enugu, Bauchi, and Akwa Ibom states, while Kogi, Oyo, and Bayelsa states recorded 1 new case each. Lagos remains top on the COVID-19 chart with 10,144 cases, followed by the FCT with 1,792 and Oyo with 1,306 cases, before Kano, which has 1,200 COVID-19 cases. 9,007 recovered patients have been discharged, with 565 deaths recorded so far. The presidency has reacted to criticism concerning the recent meeting held by the National Executive Committee of the All Progressives Congress, APC, alleging that President Muhammadu Buhari had called a political meeting in the hallowed chamber of the Federal Executive Council. A statement by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, emphatically says the meeting was not convened at the council chamber. It was virtual, not a physical meeting. The idea was to observe social distancing in view of health concerns, and President Buhari chose the council chamber where the digital facilities are located. Yes, it is true that governors and leaders of the National Assembly joined the president from the chamber from where he spoke, but the larger body of the members in attendance was all connected via video calls. Members of the dissolved Adams Oshomole-led National Working Committee of the All Progressives Congress have accepted wholeheartedly the decision of the National Executive Committee of the party. In a statement jointly signed by the immediate past National Secretary and National Vice Chairman South of the APC, Waziri Bulama, and Helad Etta, said, as party men and stakeholders, they do not intend to sustain a group agitation against their party. They appreciate the intervention of the leader of the party, President Muhammadu Buhari, and expressed an alloyed loyalty to the party and the caretaker committee led by Maimala Buni, and assure all that they will not contest their authority, but instead work selflessly with the team in its peace and consensus-building efforts within the party, especially during the party's electioneering efforts in the forthcoming Edo State gubernatorial election on September 19, 2020. President of the United Nations General Assembly, Professor Tijani Mohamed Bande, has described the global adoption of the UN Charter in 1945 as a moment of reckoning. Professor Bande was speaking at a virtual ceremony to mark the 75th anniversary of the UN Charter.
A time for action, ambition, and partnership. 3/4 of a century ago, skeptics doubted the resolve of the members of the United Nations. Cynicism did not prevail then, nor will it now.
We need to reimagine multilateralism, give it teeth to function as the founders intended, and ensure that effective global governance is a reality when it is needed.
And on security, the Nigerian army has put in place strategies to rapidly end emerging security threats in parts of the country. Chief of the Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, stated this at the inauguration of projects at the headquarters, 3 Brigade, Kano.
For any soldier in the field to be efficient, his welfare must be properly taken care of. And this is one of the programs that we have for our officers and men.
And what we are also seeing today is the demonstration of the Chief of Army Staff's commitment to the upliftment of the welfare and living accommodation of personnel of the Nigerian Army.
Meanwhile, the Nigerian military says the Air Task Force of Operation Lafia Dole has destroyed a Boko Haram terrorist logistics base and neutralized scores of their fighters in Tongole and Bukar Miram in Borno State. A statement by Coordinator Defense Media Operations, Major General John Enenche, indicates that confirmation by credible intelligence of Boko Haram convergence at Tungale led to the successful air interdiction mission by the ATF. Similarly, at Bukar Miram, a Boko Haram terrorist logistics hub on the fringes of the Lake Chad, the air strikes, which were carefully timed and executed in multiple waves for maximum effects, resulted in the obliteration of designated portions of the terrorist facilities. Several of their fighters were also killed in the process. That's the morning news for now. The program continues with Kingsley and Kieran after this break. Good morning.
We're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, the federal government's economic sustainability plan has been described as healthy for economic growth. Let's join our correspondent Kunle Adeyeye for details on business news.
The coronavirus pandemic has forced many economies to go back to the drawing board and come up with plans that will spark a rebirth in their economies. The federal government took similar step when the Federal Executive Council approved the 2.3 trillion naira Nigeria Economic Sustainability Plan that will span 12 months. A professor of capital market, Uche Waleke, said the latest developments and other intervention programs by the federal government will help reposition the economy.
I believe that going forward with the stimulus packages the government have rolled out, with interventions by the government and the CBN, that should stimulate the economy, oil the economy well enough for the impact to be positively felt.
The federal government is planning to achieve the economic revival through mass agricultural program, investment in infrastructure, informal sector support, business support for SMEs, technology, expansion of the national social investment programs, cutting non-essential spending, and support for state governments. For Business News, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Thank you, Kunle Adeyeye, for that package. Now, up ahead on Good Morning Nigeria is newspaper review.
Our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atebe, is here with us in the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning.
Yeah, Bayo, it's good to have you.
Good to have you too.
All right.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, let's begin with the Nation newspaper. We have 3 papers this morning, Kingsley, and let's start with the Nation. Above the nameplate of the Nation, we have stories there. Leaders bid Ajimobi farewell, or your government unfair to him. Find out who says that. It's on page 2. Ohanese protests as a splinter group springs up. That's on page 5. Hama Bachamal dies. I hope I got that correctly. In Adamawa at 66. It's on page 4. It's Man U versus Chelsea. Arsenal versus Man City. That's today's match on the EPL. It's on page 5 for details. Now, the lead story this morning on the Nation newspaper, power consumers, man, kick over 100% tariff hike. MAN is a Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Now, new electricity price regime takes effect from Wednesday. The story is on page 3. And of course, below the photo story, petrol price fully deregulated. The PPRA will no longer fix prices. Now, right at the bottom of the Nation, whistleblower demands commission for exposing $1 billion hidden by an agency. That's on page 5.
Okay, we'll take a look at the Punch newspaper. Punch above the name flag comes with a kicker. Aviation, Ongema seeks bailout, says airfares will rise. That's on page 26. Wadume, that's another kicker. Balarabe's troops tortured me until I fainted, says survival. That's page 8. No going back on petrol price control, PPPRA insists. 13 vessels coming from 5 COVID-19 endemic nations, and that's attributed to NIMASA. And the lead story of the paper comes with a double-decker headline. APC caretaker panel meets today to set up convention committees and apologize to Nigerians for holding neck meeting in Federal Executive Council chamber. You can't dictate to Buhari where to hold meetings. Presidency replies PDP and others. And the photographs on the front page there show the burial rites of the former governor of Oyo State, Ajimobi. Ajimobi's wife berates Makinde as ex-Oyo governor is buried. That's page 9. Nwodo kicks as new Ohanese leadership registers with CAC. 2023, stop APC from destroying Nigeria, says Wike. We neutralized 12 Zamfara and Katsina bandits and arrested informants. That's according to Defense Headquarters. Buhari, ACF, Fintiri Mon, Adamawa Monarch, Bachama. That's on page 7. Police arrest 10 suspected cultists in FCT. Kogi CJ, that's Chief Judge who died in isolation center, buried in Abuja. Details on page 7.
Thank you, Kinsley. Let's start with the report about the deaths. First, the former governor of your state, Abiola Ajimobi, was buried over the weekend. The burial took place privately at his Oluyole residence at Ibadan. Isiaka Abiola Ajimobi Mosque, that was the venue where the prayers was held. Just as he once said when at his 70th birthday, he said nobody in his family had ever reached the age 70. And he said at his 40th birthday, he had wished that he will live up to 70. Now that he has reached 70, he's hoping to reach 96 and, if possible, go beyond 96. Unfortunately, he died when he was 70 years and 6 months. At the funeral ceremony, Alhaji Muhyiddin Bello said that all human beings are running away from death, but death is inevitable. But the important thing is that the contribution people make to society while they are around. Among those who were around to condole the family, the governor of Ekiti State, that of Kano, and the deputy governor of Oyo State. There was also a delegation from Lagos, led by the deputy governor of Oyo and the speaker of the Lagos State House of Assembly. In Kogi State, Justice Nasiru Ajana also died over the weekend at an Abuja hospital after a brief illness. The president has already condoled the family of Justice Ajana, as well as the government and people of Kogi State. His death is coming barely a week after the death of the president of the Kogi Customary Court of Appeal, Justice Ibrahim Shaibu Ataduga. On COVID-19, a total of 1,953 cases have been recorded since Friday when we last spoke about COVID-19 from here. And between that time and now, we have had 16 deaths. And that is to emphasize that the deaths and incidences are still on the increase. But up to date, we have had so far 130,164 tests conducted, and out of which we have had 24,567 positive cases. This is about 18.9%. On those that have been discharged, we have about 9,007 persons discharged, and those who are currently in treatment are 14,995. The number of deaths since the 108 days of we started being alert for COVID-19 is 565. And we hope we'll be able to redress this by keeping to the COVID-19 protocol. The world over, the case is now beyond 10 million. We just killed 10 million over the weekend. 10,063,311, and the number of deaths has exceeded 500,000. Specifically, it's 500,103. So the world has to watch out for COVID-19.
Exactly, exactly. And some persons are even becoming so, I don't know, uninterested about all these results concerning COVID-19. Because in America, for instance, the Trump, detests anything concerning COVID-19. They just want to hear about it, especially when it comes to testing. He said, look, if you test more, you get more. So stop testing. I wonder where that is going to take him to. But Bayo, there's this concern here on the nation, power consumers. Man kicked over 100% tariff hike. What do you make of that?
Well, you see, there is an indication that with effect from 1st of July, there will be a tariff increase. Tariff increase means for a manufacturer that you will pay more for the electricity you consume to produce products. And it has an effect,
yes.
Yes, in the prices of commodities in the market. The concern of everybody in Nigeria is that people are paying for electricity that is hardly ever available. And those who are producing electricity are saying that there are people who are stealing their electricity, and therefore they are not getting their money's worth for the electricity they are distributing. So the dilemma is, how do we provide enough electricity? There is also the challenge. Much as generation has increased beyond 4,000, sometimes up to about 6,000, the ability to transmit is also a challenge. So unless all these things are sorted out, the manufacturer certainly will create...
And meters provided.
Yes.
Well, that's part of the issue. When you're looking at the wider implications of all of this, it is not just manufacturers, but other power consumers. Now, what impact will this have on the government's economic sustainability plan?
Tremendous. Very huge.
Exactly. What impact will it have? Is it going to assist the government's plan, or is it going to make nonsense of it? Because once you now have distortions arising from inflationary pressures and all of that, how will the government then be able to realize the objectives in the sustainability plan? We know that power providers have been talking about the so-called multi-year tariff order. Every time, that's the most important flag that they wave. Multi-year tariff, you have to review the tariff, you have to review the tariff. But two critical issues: power is hardly available on the one hand. Secondly, persons who have power are not metered, and they keep telling you that, oh, metering is a challenge, it's a challenge. I mean, it's not something that is working. And incidentally, that's the subject matter of the editorial this morning from the Punch newspaper. But before we get to the Punch editorial, the death in Kogi, well, of course, it happened in Abuja, and so the fatality will be attributed to Abuja. The late chief judge of Kogi, who passed away at an isolation center in Gwawalada in Abuja, again, of course, raises a pertinent question as to the needless confrontation between the government of Kogi State and the NCDC. If you recall, there was a time officials of NCDC went to Kogi, and there was a threat to quarantine them for 14 days before they could begin their work. And Kogi State has been living in almost perpetual denial
exactly,
as to whether or not there is COVID-19 in that state or not. The governor of Kogi State was here in Abuja last week, where he attended the APC NEC meeting. Was he in Abuja 15 days before that time, where his aides also in Abuja 15 days before that time? In other words, were they quarantined in Abuja before they went for the meeting?
You don't need to go far here, because this living in self-denial is very confusing, and of course sending wrong signals to the rest of the people living in the state. As a governor, as the number one citizen of that state, you should come out and say the truth about the situation, because now this judge that died is from Kogi State, and as a chief judge, he lives in Kogi State.
If you check the list today, NCDC has added one to Kogi, which makes it 4. Of the earlier 3 persons that were identified as COVID-19 has been denied by Kogi State government to say that no, as far as they are concerned, they are challenging those 3. And we are not too sure whether they will accept that this the justice that passed away also actually died of
Did
COVID-19.
the Kogi State government perform an autopsy on the late Chief Judge?
Is he saying that Kogi is insulated from this?
Now, before that time, there were 5 dead patients at the Federal Medical Center, Lokoja, which were suspicious. And that was why the NCDC persons traveled to Lokoja. They were supposed to follow up to find a part of this. But with the threat of quarantine, they had to withdraw. So nobody was sure about what was the cause of those deaths.
If you recall, I mean, Kano at some point had the so-called unexplained deaths, and it was important for the NCDC and the federal government to go to Kano, because Kano State appeared to be overwhelmed at the time. And once the intervention came from the federal government, you saw that there was some stability in terms of COVID-19 cases. I think that's what Kogi probably requires. I mean, it's not. It doesn't. If assuming the state government remains cooperative, I think the federal government can, of course, use its authority under the Quarantine Act as well as the NCDC law, to proceed into the state and do what is necessary. Now, let's take the editorial. It's from the Punch newspaper, and it says power sector crisis. Review privatization now. The editorial in part says government's efforts to tackle the chokehold on the economy have so far failed to produce the needed results. Now, the government, with its substantial interests across the power chain, still has a big role to play in restoring sanity, which is why it has brought Siemens, a recognized global player, into the fray. The rigged privatization should be reviewed, and certainly the power crisis goes beyond just massive infusion of money.
Well, there's no gainsaying the fact that we have a challenge with our electricity supply and distribution in the country. And therefore, citizens are not getting electricity for the purposes of their domestic business, for their small-scale businesses, and industrial businesses. The other challenge, however, was that the expectation was that if electricity was privatized, the output would be better than when it was a public power supply. Ironically, the reverse is the case. And since government made initiative to bring in the idea of cement, some of the people who want the privatization are now in charge, are also threatened. They are going to court because they believe that the terms of agreement they signed with government in buying over the electricity activities is now being challenged.
You see, let them go to court. As a matter of fact, they have not been able to deliver since the unbundling of the sector.
Yes.
Nothing positive has happened. We've just had a epileptic power supply, and in some states, discos are even more interested in not providing. They're interested in providing meters. They love it, when they are doing a metered billing. I have a place where I come from where, in fact, residents are even believing that that is the right way to go, for them to have a regular light. Let there be no meters, right? So you now deal with the staff of the discos. I argued with them because I happen to have a family there. That it is not necessary, it's not good to do that, because how long are you going to sustain that? You say you don't want meter, then everybody pays the same amount of money, irrespective of the appliances in your home. That cannot be sustained. So the idea of going to court on the Siemens issue, fine and good, let them go to court, because Siemens is coming to to correct their anomalies. One, they have the money, which these people do not have. They have the technical know-how, which I'm not sure these people have at its best. So why not allow Siemens to come?
Well, the terms of the privatization is not cast in steel. It can be reviewed, and this is the process for which it is going on. It is the expectation that by the time Siemens comes in with the expertise, they will be able to supplement and will be able to address some of the challenges that are now bedeviling the electricity. But if, for the purposes of ego, that they have acquired that and therefore they are not prepared to let it go, then we are going to have a crisis.
Let's just hope they will not sabotage the efforts of Siemens to the come, because Nigerians are good at such things. Because if sabotage comes in, then Siemens will as well have difficulty, doing their job. Because what happens is that Siemens is not going to start manufacturing other, infrastructure. Already the infrastructure is here. They're only going to perhaps add some expertise in the infrastructure, and of course bring in some managerial ability, that could enable some things that were done wrongly, are right, and see how we can improve in the sector. But if they come up with this sabotage or going to court, that means, look, we have a long way to go in the sector.
All right, gentlemen, I want to thank Bayo says that the privatization is not cast in steel. If it is cast in steel, you can smelt steel.
Of course, of course.
And even if it is cast in stone, you can either chisel the stone or you blast it. That's why you have rock blasting activities.
There's one thing I want to mention here. Ohanese protest as splinter group springs up. I just want to make it clear, that Ohanese has never lived up to its bidding, since it was formed. So it's not new that it's not disturbing that the other groups are springing up. It's because of the way Ohanese has been run in decades. That made some people to say, look, let us establish ours.
You see, some of our cultural organizations, the way they go about their activities, make people begin to wonder whether they are meeting the objective for which they pronounce themselves publicly to be concerned about.
Exactly.
Because sometimes they get into cultural and non-cultural conflicts.
Political affairs, no doubt about that.
Conflicts.
Seeking political positions, using that platform.
Okay, all right. Baya Tebe, thank you for being here. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We're taking a short break now. All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Our focus in our conversation segment this morning is on the management of political parties. And just before we commence, let's listen into this background by our correspondent, Oyemi Ajayi.
In the words of ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle, man is a political animal. Invariably, man is involved in the political activities around him, whether consciously or unconsciously. In Nigeria, the political space is always saturated with activities of political parties, whether on or off the electioneering cycle. Most times, political activities are driven by the quest for political power and the cravings of vested interest, which can contradict laid-down political ideology, questioning the management of political parties. Political experts consider the management of political parties the exclusive preserve of entrenched godfathers and moneybags who decide the political fate and ambition of members. This trend plays out severally during primary elections, where the searchlight is beamed on a party to ascertain the level of internal democracy it practices. Irrespective of how good a candidate's political manifesto is, money plays decisive roles, as party leadership and members always prefer someone who has made significant financial contributions to the party. During general elections, citizens too always prefer someone who can throw money around. The modes of funding campaigns and political parties have become threats to the performance of political office holders as they get entangled with godfathers whom they feel obliged to. On the flip side, many have commended how far the country's democratization has fared since 1999, with major roles played by political parties that make attempts to entrench the tenets of democracy. In all this, how should political parties be better managed, and how better can parties practice internal democracy? These and more questions guests on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria will provide answers to shortly.
And to discuss the topic here in Abuja studio, we have Dr. Adewale Aderemi. He's the Director, Democratic Studies, National Institute of Legislative and Democratic Studies. You're welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
And also here with us is a regular face on Good Morning Nigeria. And I'm talking about Alhaji Yunusa Tanko, National Chairman, National Conscience Party, NCP, and the presidential candidate of the party in 2019 general elections. It's just a pleasure to have you here this morning.
Thank you very much, Ken.
All right. Also here with us in the studios is another very familiar face, Mr. Ezenwa Nwagu, who is chairman of Partners for Electoral Reforms. Mr. Nwagu, delighted to have you this morning on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
And from our Ibadan Network Center, we have Professor Remi Ayede. Professor Remi Ayede is a professor of political institutions, governance, and public policy in the Department of Political Science at the University of Ibadan. Prof. Ayede, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Morning. It's my pleasure to be here with you too.
All right, and I hope that audio will improve in the course of the program, constantly because it's a bit faint. Gentlemen, you're welcome to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. You know, Nigeria is a nation with a checkered political history, from party formation to party ideologies and philosophy. We have experienced the ups and downs in this direction. When, of course, the colonial masters introduced politics into our system, it has been struggle all the way from the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and up to the present 21st century. We've had it so hard, especially when it comes to the issue of political party management. To date, of course, the last episode that played out within the leading party is a clear indication that we may not have learned a lot, from all the debacles that we've had in the course of forming political parties to run a government. And I want to start with Dr. Adewale Aderemi, Director, Democratic Studies, National Institute of Legislative and Democratic Studies. What has been the problem? What has been the problem, when it comes to the issue of political party management in Nigeria? You can go historical and, of course, bring it up to speed, what is presently playing out, in our political parties in Nigeria.
Well, I think, like you said, rightly, it's a checkered, trajectory, from however far back you want to go. I think, quite a number of things, need, to be, several variables, you could, allude to. I think, first of all, for me, I think the paramount, problem is how the political parties emerge, Are they, reflective, are they autochtonously, derived, reflecting from, the different, variations of ideologies or orientations in society, or are they just, the limited choices, people have, with, virtually no ideological routine, So that, I think, is, where we need to begin the assessment, Our political parties, do they, reflect ideologies of different sections of society, or are they just platforms for, fielding candidates to compete elective offices, little more than pressure groups. So once you answer that question, then we go into, several other things. One is political parties as institutions, are symptomatic, of a general societal problem. Other institutions are not better, not more cohesive, more vibrant, than political parties. Name it. All of them are probably pliant, not very well articulated. So we have a serious institutional problem as in general, that is not just limited to political parties. And don't also forget that, we are a fledgling democracy. The oldest of these political parties in extant, contemporaneous Nigeria is probably 22 years old. That's the PDP. And you can't, we shouldn't expect that party to have the same sophistry, the same level of, cohesion, cohesiveness, like parties that have been 200 years old and in more mature democracy. So we should be measured in our assessment of our political parties. But generally, I think there's a lot of, the force that our political parties do not, for me, and I mean, I stand to be, corrected. This is a very personal opinion. Do not offer, ideological choices, across the wide spectrum, of philosophies that you could have. People really have absolutely no choice. People, and a good example of that, we see people crisscross parties. You were in this party, then you went back to that party, then you joined the third party, and then you returned to the first party and all of that, because there's little or nothing to choose between these parties. Now, if you look at more advanced democracies, the political parties are representative of ideals and values. Once you have that, it's difficult to begin to migrate from one to the other. And then you have conviction in becoming a part of that party. And the values that regiment that party, is what keeps it in focus. Whether you disagree with the party or not, you remain because that is the party that best represents your philosophies and outlook on life. Because we don't have that, it's problematic to manage interest. If what you have as political parties, you find sometimes strange bedfellows, from extreme, ends of the ideological spectrum belonging to the same political party. So what is the common, denominator that puts you and this other person in the same party? It becomes, just maybe material, pedestrian, interest. And to manage that with all the features we have as a society, becomes very, very difficult. So I think these are the, and there are several other, things that we can discuss as problems of political party management in Nigeria. All
right. Thank you very much, Dr. Adewale Aderemi, for your opening comments. I'd like to ask this question. I think Dr. Yunusa and Ezenwa, a couple of years ago, we had also taken on this subject matter on managing political parties. I recall that Ezenwa was part of that conversation. But on and on, we continue to see the challenges that political parties represent, not just to themselves, but also ultimately to the polity. Now, just from an associational perspective, political parties, like any association, have a requirement to manage themselves. How have we gone ahead with this associational imperative with respect, using the Fourth Republic as an example, and what have been the key issues in this? Let's begin with Ezenwa Nwagu.
Thanks. I think the big issue for me, if you study, like you made mention of the political parties of the First Republic, how were they formed? Who becomes a member of those political parties? I recall, and I've read very clearly that you didn't just come into NCNC or Action Group or the rest of them. They had a school where you are trained as a cadre of the political party. So you are not just, it's not an all-commerce affair. All right. But what you have now is a distortion, complete distortion. Distortion in the sense that by the time the military left in 1999, it was those who had resources, who had relationship with the state, whether the military that was exiting, that eventually coagulated to form what you now had as the political parties of those periods. And in doing that, the reason for forming those political parties were very clear. It was for power. They were not, in the sense in which we know it, political parties. They were vote-catching machines. The intention was, how do we use this vehicle to wrestle power? And then after that, we can begin to talk about how to build these structures of democracy like political parties. But I've said, if you remember, Kisley, I've said clearly that part of the challenge was the ambush by the executive of those periods, the ambush of party administration by the executive. They took it over, and then you began to hear things like leader of the party. Before then, you couldn't imagine President Shehu Shagari come to MPN meeting and be the one directing affairs of the meeting. Chief Adisa Akinloye held sway from everything that we knew at that period. When the president comes to a meeting, he sits like any other member of the party. But when we saw President Obasanjo became the leader of the party, decides who becomes chairman of his party at will, that weakened the organs of those parties. And in weakening the organs of those parties, those who took over, whether in the state or in the federal, have not seen anything wrong with that. So whether in the state, the governor has appropriated to himself the leader of the party in the state. The president is seen as a leader. If there are issues within the party, the organs of the party that have responsibility to deal with discipline, membership, and such other issues outsource that power to the executive. And once you outsource that power, you continue to weaken and decimate, and then every other party that ought to now show a different example begin to queue up around those kind of issues. So the national chairman, somebody founds a party today, and the next day he's the presidential candidate of his party. There is no. The ANC was formed in 1912 by Isaka Pizelli. He did not become the president of the ANC until 13 years later. But what we have in our country is that people form parties. The basis, the real, motivation for forming political parties is how do we get power, and that has weakened the ability of first recruiting members. Who are the members of these political parties? If you remember, there was a time the different political parties tried to, one political party tried to have biometric registration and all of those things. You are not clear who is a member of what. In many places, the same people who are APC are the same people who are PDP. It depends on, so you are not paying membership dues. You have no, if you are coming for the convention of the party, an individual pays for your accommodation, provides vehicle, gives you stipend for where you're coming. You have no direct contribution and ownership of these political parties. So, but there are alternatives. But Nigerians, because of our penchant for patronage and cronyism, will continue to hold on to those in power. There are alternatives. When Dr. Aderemi was talking about there are ideological parties. They exist. And they are organizing, But the challenge that they have is that people have no patience for that organizing. All we are looking for is how do we become a candidate of this political party and then have access to power. So the governor, you want to contest election, the governor buys up all the forms for the party and decides who. So when you see them outsource that to the president, when you see them concede to the president leading the party, it is because they want to appropriate such powers in the subnational. So in many states, you cannot go to House of Representatives, you cannot be a senator, you cannot be a councillor if the governor does not say so. So as a member of a political party, you can't wake up. They even criminalize aspiration.
Well spoken. You said ideological parties exist. Who wants to go to ideological party who does not have the wherewithal in terms of finances, no financial muscle, to sponsor candidates? That is why that never existed.
So political parties exist to sponsor candidates?
Well, we are
agents of social mobilization.
That is why we are discussing this morning, because now it does mean that we didn't learn anything. we didn't learn anything from the parties that were formed prior to independence, NCNC, NPC, OBGA, and the rest of them, which had a good leadership formation. And you rightly mentioned that of the Second Republic, when we had the MPN, Adisa Akinleye, who was chairman of MPN at the time, like you said, Shekari was not going to be a person to determine what happens at a particular meeting. Now these things have changed, and I want to bring in Alhaji Yunus Atanko, who is also the chairman of a party and a presidential candidate of a party. So what happened along the line, in terms of appreciation of what should be a political organization? What happened that led to the fact that, look, if the man who is heading the executive arm of government does not determine who goes where, nothing happens?
Okay, let me go a little bit scholarly. According to Wikipedia, it describes political party as a group of people who come together ideologically or having similar positions, and they sponsor candidates so that they can win elections. If they win election, they will be able to implement the party agenda. In this case, the manifesto of the party. Harold Leswell says that political party or politics is who get what time, and how. Then David mentioned it in his situation. He said that politics is more or less a concentration or distribution of value for the society. Then Vladimir Lenin, he said it's a concentration of expression for an economic view. But eventually, the key words there is coming together, ideologically, and distribution of value. Does that exist in our present demonstration? No. I concur with the Second Republic issue. But then, what are the scenarios at that particular point in time? The scenario in those days was that majority of the populace are a little bit more comfortable. So they don't really depend on who paid the pipers, dictate the tone. Unfortunately for us at this present dispensation, there's a conspiracy theory against the state. What I mean by this is that the electorate also partake in this particular situation we find ourselves. They are supposed to be the determinant of corrective change, but unfortunately they have studied the present dispensation and understand that the people that they vote for do not actually give them what they want. And so therefore, they look for how to get what they want as a people before even electing you as a person. That becomes a big problem for the political parties. I must confess, managing a political party is one of the most difficult situations in which you find yourself, especially when the members of the political party themselves do not contribute to the survival of the party, i.e., generating funds, making sure you pay your membership dues, and then partaking in it so that you can subdue anybody who want to actually take the structure of the party. I remember with nostalgia, may he so rest in peace, Chief Gani Fawemi tried to train our members in such a way they will be deeply involved with the modus operandi of the party and the ideological base. You must, at every given time of our meetings, we must give you a state of the party address and then state of the nation. So you will understand exactly what political party you belong to and what is the ideals of that political party. It doesn't exist anymore because majority of the candidates who come in sometimes come in with their individual manifestos. Individual manifestos. So it's far different from the manifesto of the party which you sell to the public as a social contract. So it becomes a problem when an individual tries to usurp the power of the executive, trying to use all of his resources to take mantle. And I remember also, when I was in the National Peace Committee led by Absalam Abubakar, we visited some of the members of the political party at the National Assembly. And some of them told us that they sell their properties in order to gain access to being a candidate of political party. So invariably, what do you expect that particular person to do immediately he gets into power? He will first of all try to recoup what he has already invested in the politics. And it becomes difficult for you as a leader of a political party who somebody has come in and given you so much money and then you say you deny him that particular ticket. It doesn't really happen. So we have a problem. The problem we have, number one, is funding. Membership to take control of that particular internal party. Of course, internal party democracy will come in naturally when everybody is involved. You don't usurp the powers on the. Then there is this favoritism that happens when a group of people vote you in as a chairman. That particular group within the party itself, they have interests. Once you deny them those particular interests, you started digging your hole for removal. Because they tell you that they are the one that supported you in the first place, and they want ABC and you are not giving them. Of course, you don't become their leader anymore. But some of the issues that we have researched on is that, look, if you want to make a solution to this particular problem, two things happen. The members of the party must be the owners of the party. You must also make it in the clear terms that those who are in executive are the real leaders of the party, not anybody who becomes a candidate of the party. Because now he has apparatus of power, he can easily steal money from the treasury and then he gives you, then he becomes the leader. No, it can't happen. So if you want to make a change now, believe me, it is difficult. The people are so much deeply involved into using funds for themselves and their family and their cronies.
Well, Dr. Yunus Atanko,
yes.
Are you so pessimistic about the capacity to reform the existing system? We'll give you the opportunity to respond to that and elaborate on the points. Let's go over now to Ibadan Network Center, where we earlier introduced Professor Remi Ayede of Department of Political Science at the University of Ibadan. Professor Ayede, I still would like us to pursue, it's been touched on, the associational and what Tanko has now also introduced as the ownership imperatives in political party management. Associational, of course, it means if you're an association, you are not amorphous, you're not like an amoeba. You have to have organs, just like a human being. A human being has first to manage himself, and once you get into an association, then you have to manage yourselves. But in your opinion, why is it that parties have, in terms of administration, virtually collapsed, and they are reeling from one crisis to the other, and they seem sometimes, unable to resolve this crisis with often negative consequences for the polity and our democracy?
I think I'll begin first by saying that we must recognize that there are different kinds of political parties. And in the case of Nigeria, we have very strange kinds of political parties as well. But all over the world, of course, there has been proliferation of political parties, and because of that, there are varying levels of party institutionalization. Now, the challenge that I think we are trying to address is the failure of political parties in Nigeria to be institutionalized. They've given a number of reasons why this is the case, but I think one of the ways to look at it is to say that political parties are expected to grow. When they are founded, they are supposed to carry on a particular kind of identity, so you can distinguish one political party from the other. They are then expected to grow into an organization, and then, of course, to move from being merely an organization to a level of stabilization, where, of course, you see the political party having a distinct culture, a distinct, very firmly established organization, like you are talking about, their constitutions, their leadership, their organs, and so on and so forth. And over the years, they gain value and they become very stable. Now, it is this kind of growth that we have not seen in Nigeria. Now, when we are also talking about the problem of political parties, they've talked about money, they've talked about membership, but we must also recognize that we are not just talking about small parties or parties that came on board yesterday. We are talking about political parties that have had significant experience of running government. For instance, you talk about the PDP. It was in power for a number of years. Then we now also have the APC, which has been in government since 2015. Now, what we are saying in essence is that if we have parties who have moved from being just organizations seeking political powers into becoming organizations that have in fact managed power, how come they still face serious problem of cohesion? And I think that's where the crux of the matter is. Now, if you look at the case of the APC, for instance, and you follow very systematically how the problem has unfolded, you'll find that they actually have organs. We know who the national chairman is, and we saw the challenges he faced trying to manage the political party. So it's not all the time that we have a situation where the executive is pressing down the leadership of the political party, like we have in the case of the PDP under President Obasanjo. We have a situation where we have a national chairman who has serious problem with members of the party, especially in the build-up to the gubernatorial election in the state, leading to the kind of crisis that we have experienced within the PDP, the APC. Then second, we also talk about the question of how leadership try to build the party itself. Because organizations don't just become institutionalized, except those who lead the organization are committed to institutionalizing that organization. And when you look at the PDP and the APC, you won't be talking in terms of whether they have money to run the party or not, or whether some money bags are the one in charge of the political party. What you will see is that there has been no transition from being an organization that is dominated by a number of people into an organization where there's serious differentiation between the leadership of the political party and the political party itself as an organization, and then, of course, the candidates of the political parties that are now in government, which are nominated by the political party. So we have what we call a kind of arrested development within these two major parties. And in order to deal that, we need to look at key elements that needs to be addressed. Because what we expect leaders to do is that at different phases of the growth of the political party, they take on different forms of role, recognizing that, one, the political party is the platform on which they can wrestle power. And that is the fundamental goal of political party, to seek to form government, to seek to win elections and form government. Now, once you have that goal very clarified, what you then expect leaders to do is that once they are in government, they try to solidify the political parties. One, by creating a system within the political party where the organs can function and the political party can evolve a particular kind of culture built around its goals and ideologies. And then, of course, the political party will now act independently of the government, of external forces. So you have some kind of administrative structure of the political parties, and the processes of the political parties are very clear, and members recognize that. But what we have in Nigeria is that there are a series of fragmentation of political parties, such that these internal structures of the political parties have not been able to gain solidity. They've not been solidified. And I think it's part of the leadership failure of the political parties. And the political party cannot be transformed without the commitment of leadership to building political parties, to institutionalizing those political parties, so that they can become what they are supposed to be, parties that not just win elections, but they are also able to mobilize and constantly provide candidates for elections over a long period of time. So leadership is very key to our politics. Then, of course, if you look at the internal organization of our political party, you find that there is a huge deficit of accountability. And that is a major problem, where because of the opaque nature of the way political parties are run, people can come in and go out without any kind of commitment to either the party organs or the party structure, or even the party ideology. So you have a situation where people move in and out of political parties as if the political parties don't matter. So what we have are merely entrepreneurial parties which enable people to use them as platform to win elections, rather than political parties who have been established and developed to win power and run government effectively. And if we have to move from this period of arrested development to transit into some form of institutionalization, then the leadership of political parties, both the internal leadership of political parties, as well as candidates that they are put in government, need to rethink how they run the organization and begin to think about the future of those political parties and make efforts to ensure that they are institutionalized. And that is why it's important for them to respect their constitution. It's important for them to recognize that there's a difference between the political party and them as individuals. Because political parties are supposed to outlive those who found them. They're supposed to outlive those who are their candidates in government for the period for which the constitution provides for them to stay in power, so that we can then institutionalize parties. So there's the need to be more futuristic by the party leadership and play the role they are supposed to play in order for those party organs to function effectively. And one of the important measures that I think they signal the failure of political parties here is the appropriate grievance procedure. You find that they are unable to manage internal conflicts, and that's a recurring decimal within the political parties. So once there's disagreement about who is going to represent the party at the gubernatorial level or at the presidential level, the tendency for them to break becomes very rife. And I think this way of addressing party grievances is very important moving forward.
All right, Professor Remi Ayede, you have indeed raised some very pertinent issues concerning political party administration and general management, one of which is, of course, the issue of conflict resolution within the party. And what we have seen lately is the fact that complexity of political management or administration in Nigeria has become even more confusing, because many things come in. One can't imagine a situation where members of a party who form the constitution cannot interpret the same constitution. So when you have internal crisis, you go to court, and the entire thing mixes up and becomes so rowdy that even Nigerians begin to laugh at political party members. And another aspect for this conversation, gentlemen, should be the issue of godfatherism. What brings godfatherism about? I recall vividly, although I'm not going to mention names, one of the states in the eastern part of the country, those days in the PDP, where there was a very big internal conflict. And one person said to us that, look, I have funded this party from the beginning. When we go to rallies, I put my money on the line. I hire 50 buses. I pay for whatever expenses of the party. And at this point, they want to choose a governor, that I should be the one to select who goes or who doesn't go. So godfatherism is an issue here in Nigeria. And when some persons will also say, look, I have been here, I have worked so hard to put a stop to godfatherism, the person comes back again to play the same role of godfatherism. Let's bring you in again, Dr. Adewale Aderemi. What do you make of that? And going forward as a nation, because now we have to continue with the political platforms that we are on at the moment, because it is the best form of civil administration, right? So how do we tackle the issue of godfatherism? Because that is what has been playing out over the years, in fact, since 1999.
Well, I think, we still have to go back to the kernel of the issue for me, is what do political parties represent? Why do people gather together under one umbrella? What brings them together? If it is to wrest power, then power for what? Okay, that's what's going to, for me, sits at the heart, is the nucleus of the whole, issue, including, the question you have just raised. First, like Remy was saying, these parties won't grow into mass movements unless they are identified, with a particular policy they want to drive. Take any 10 people, any 10 members of any of the major political parties, and ask them, what's your view on taxes? What's your view on education? And you probably will get 10 different answers, And unless, let me give you an example all over Europe and the Western world now. Take the Green Party. It's growing because it is identified, with a particular policy it wants to contest elections to win power and drive a particular policy. The Republican Party in the US or the Democrats, they have particular, ideologies that they want to drive and win power for. But the problem here with our, democracy is that political parties want to contest and win power for what? As access to material wealth. And if that is the case, then it is hypocritical to say that the godfather should not reap where he sows. It's hypocritical if what we want power for is to make money and I invest. And then you tell me, you pretend as if, it's moral instructions now, I should just go there, spend my money, nurture this party with the hope of gaining power and then getting access to the national commonwealth. And then you tell me, I'm a bad person. It's hypocritical of all of us, to think that way. These parties, what do they want power for? Is it to drive a particular populous, mass agenda? If that is the case, then you can say, okay, godfathers, they are bad apples, that's going to spoil the whole bunch. But that is not the case. We all know, except we want to pretend, that these people, somebody who believes that taxes should not be paid, with somebody that believes that 100% should be paid in taxes, are together as members of the same party. Somebody who believes in free education, somebody who says education is not necessary, are members of the same party. What brings them together? And they contest elections to win, not to service anybody, okay? Not to drive any identifiable policy, but so those institutions will not grow, because they stand for nothing, but get a political party, last week I was speaking with now the former National Secretary of the APC, Waziri Bulama. And we had this very interesting, conversation, about how that he says, look, our party is a mass movement, organization and all that. I disagree with it. He gave me a copy of their constitution. I said, I have it, go and study it again. Okay. And actually, we were preparing to have a webinar, to bring, incidentally, Dr. Yunus as well, have a webinar and discuss, this whole issue about what the political parties in Nigeria stand for. Are they meaningful, organizations that are capable of, expanding to mass movements? Do they represent, do they even, have a feeling of what the grassroots want? Except to just coalesce. That is the reason you find somebody who was in the same party. The only reason you join the party now is it depends on what you want. Do I want to win the governorship? Then you look at your state and which party is likely to win it. And then you go into that. So once you have that problem, then the party, again, man is a political animal. And where the carcass is, that's where the eagles will be gathered, right? So once you have a godfather that's able to put the money there, you understand. What we want, what works best is, is what everybody wants. The best way to win this election is to monetize it. So we're not going to solve the problem of godfatherism until one, we identify purpose, with our political parties. Two, that we de-emphasize the role of money. Both, it's the social engagement that we all collectively designed. The materialism is the key thing, all of us, not just the political parties. So once we have that, then there's nothing wrong with godfatherism. But if the political party, for instance, says we want, we're a party, for pro-poor policies. We're a party that wants to, in 10 years, reduce poverty by 50%. Then you have a goal. The likelihood is that people from the grassroots will identify with that ground, join that party, and then it grows. And then once the party is known for ideology A, you can't derail it because it has popular support from and the godfather will not arise. But if money is the name of the game, then of course the godfather, will stay.
Well, Dr. Doreme, thank you very much. I mean, the issue of the godfather will take us to another but related perspective on this whole conversation. In terms of management, direct management, a godfather doesn't run a political party. It's the power behind the throne, as it were. Now, but you can merge the godfather along with some of the key managers of political parties. I'm coming to Ezenwa for this. Some observers will say that there is a great deal of disconnect between party managers and their members, plus, of course, the electorate. Ordinarily, you would say that your party members would form a chunk of the electorate where you can get assured votes. So your next target will be, how do we now hunt for those who are undecided or win over persons from other political parties? But there is this disconnect. Party managers have virtually no relationship with their members except when they want to rally them for purposes of world congresses or convention and so on and so forth. How do we weld this? Because I know that money is the currency. Professor Iken and Zibiro, once referred to political parties, even of the Second Republic, as trading companies. But how do we ensure that this organic link is there between the party members and the party managers and ultimately the electorate?
Okay, I think for me is that is there any political party where people make a career right now as party administrators, where somebody says, I have a career in this party, I can rise from being administrative secretary to become director, to become, and then retire from that political party? That's not happening because the relationship between the party and those structures we are talking about is transactional. Once, for instance, a government is formed, and that's what we used to see, government takes over the payment of salaries of relations of people who are in government who are put to represent the interest of those people in those political parties. That is, if you go to a political party and see those who run those political parties, they have relationship, one way or the other, with somebody who is in government. So once you fall out of favor, you are not able to pay those salaries. That's the first thing. So there is no career. Nobody makes. So that's number one. You can take, for instance, the trajectory of how, and I'll name names. You had PPA. PPA was formed by Dr. Jules Okalu. as soon as that vehicle was no longer relevant for what PPA is existing, it can't even pay rent right now. Atahiru,
we have no information as to that.
no, Atahiru Bafarawa was in. No, you must be able to know this thing. It's not. These are concrete issues. Okay, when he left the AMPP, if they founded another that political party is virtually not existing today. When Dr. Mimiko left Labour became a shell. There is no need pretending about these things because the resources, the engagement is transactional. And once you take off that transactional relationship, you are then able to build a political party. But now let's go to ownership, because that's important. If I run to the governor, if the chairman of my political party in the state is virtually in the government house, if the governor is having a meeting, he has to introduce the chairman of the party to you. There's no distinct differentiation between the party and those in government, because nobody, the party chairman depends on the government for his survival. Now, when you have congresses, elective congresses, delegates to those political parties are paid. Everybody knows this, that in many states, for instance, to become a candidate of a political party, you have to pay as much as ₦1 million to delegates. For you to go to House of Representatives, you have to spend, for instance...
That is for indirect primaries.
Yes, indirect primaries. Whether it's even the other direct, you still have to provide vehicles, provide all kinds of things to bring the people to the venue of your direct. So we must de-emphasize the role of money, because when I saw Doctor, there is positive godfatherism, but the one dealing with us right now is the negative godfatherism. That is killing the ability of structures of political parties to thrive on their own in a way that they can. Every party has a disciplinary committee. But I cannot respect you when I paid you to become a candidate. I paid you money. The relationship we had was transactional. For me to be a candidate of the party, apart from my expression of interest form and the rest of the things that I virtually had to pay you money to get that ticket. So when you say you want to discipline me, I look at you and say, who are you? So if we do not strengthen, and I think that's what Professor Remy and Dr. Adewale is emphasizing, we need to get back to a system in which you had People's Democratic Institute, for instance, where party members went for training. That PDI is dead. It's not alive today. No political party, they don't send anybody to NILS, they won't send anybody to NIPS. Okay? So there's no motivation to run a party administration in the real sense of it. Obviously. So right now what you have is, as soon as one government ends, if it ends, you want a governor to be chairman of the political party. Why do you want a former governor to be, or a serving governor to be, so that the resources and the relationship between what is private and what is public is not clearly differentiated in Nigeria.
But Kiran, I know you're going to come in here. Kiran, right on this, please, because he's talking about training even party cadres. If you look at some other associational entities that are often very vibrant, take Labour, for instance. There's a Labour Institute, and those who are in the Labour movement, they undergo training from time to time. Various institutions, local and international. Do we have that? That for our political parties?
That is before I'll add to that. That is what Nwagu has just stated.
Yes.
That all the arrangements are transactional. As soon as that transactional a phase is completed, another one opens. And there you are. We talked about a Labour Party formed by an individual. The moment the individual left the party, he died. Even the former governor of Edo State, got to through that platform, of Labour Party. And what happened? He left the Labour Party and went for a bigger party. So as everyone said, it's transactional. What I wanted to add, before you come in, for that question, is the fact that we also talk about followership. Followership of a political party. You have a political party.
That's right.
Which of course played the role of being a presidential candidate. So you understand what followership is all about.
That's right.
We often hear that followers don't want to even hear the issue of ideology or philosophy of any sort. What they want is a candidate that will get to power, become a governor, and empower them financially. Is that the experience you've had?
Well, two things play out here. But before I answer your question, let me make a clarity as regard to the training issue. Some of the political parties who are ideological based, some of us we have training. In fact, it's a constant basic thing that we do. But in other larger situations, when I was the chairman of the Interparty Advisory Council, IPAC, myself and Chief Peter Ame, what we had was we really went back to research and said, look, there's no training for political parties. There's nothing like that. So we had the support from the European Union. We now had a template, and we agreed on having a political party training institute in NIPS. It exists up to today. And that particular training, you can confirm that. And it was doing art, Then what we did was that the professors training us on policies and political party ideology and all of those ones. And then it takes in from cadre to cadre for training, starting from the political party chairman, secretaries, treasurers, legal advisors, and all of those on constant basis, so that people will be well grounded as regard to training. So with regard to that, we have an institute at the highest apex of the land, which is even the first, I think, in Africa, as the case may be. So they are still managing that, and resources is being given to manage that particular institute. So when it comes to the issue of followership comes with the belief and study of the manifesto and the constitution of the party. At every political party meeting, it is very, very important that the members should know exactly what kind of party do they belong to. We had a candidate who come into the party. He didn't even know from the back and forth. All he thought was that, okay, he's coming into an ideological party who doesn't have money or funding to administer. So let me come and resolve those particular power. In fact, at a point in time, we had a challenge based on that. We had a candidate who wanted to move from an existing big political party, and he has amassed so much wealth just to come into our party. And Gani said, no. In fact, he didn't say so. It was the fear of that particular, that if he's going to Gani's party, Gani may let me use the word, say, he may not accept him, because Gani will believe that he has stolen so much money to come into to NCP to use. So leadership actually play a key role as regard to who becomes the candidate of the party based on principle. But at the same time, too, it deterred that political party of having an opportunity of winning election, considering the scenario in which we find ourselves in Nigeria. Because membership of followers of the party may not have, like probably a party like us, who believe in peasant farmers and mechanics and all of those ones, may not have the resources to transport them to the venue of that particular maybe primaries and the rest of them. So you must depend on how do you mobilize your member, and that is where membership due come in. The dues of the members actually supposed to be the guiding financial force that will determine independency of that particular member. Once that is not there, they remain very, very vulnerable to the person that has money to transform the party. As you speak, do you know that majority of the political party leaders do not have salaries? As a chairman of a political party, you don't have salaries. You don't have vehicles to move you from one point A to point B. And the moment you come in with this regalia and Barbariga and the rest of them, I'm the chairman of so party, a lot of your members of your family and all expect you to dash them money. They don't want to hear any story. Especially when you now control the governor, no way.
But
so these are things that we need to put into perspective. We own with the members of the political party, when they earn the political party, they earn it to decide as regard to how the well-being of the party is. And that can help in propelling the agenda in which we want to be, so that the political party can be independent of who papers dictate the terms.
All right, let me quickly, as an institution, let me quickly jump in on the issue of training.
No, we're going to have to take a short break now, okay. Dr. Aderemi. We'll come back to it. Just pause and KIV your point. It's Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We're taking a commercial break now. Nigeria Live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's return to our Ibadan studios where Professor Remi Ayede is still with us. Professor Remi Ayede, I mean, that's something for those of us who had experience with the Second Republic politicians, and when you look into what has also played out on the Fourth Republic, one is at a loss. For instance, there is a post known as Organizing Secretary, which used to be a very powerful position in political parties. But today, you hardly hear of the role or function of any such organizing secretary. It just becomes, as it were, a sinecure position. And then power, of course, gets concentrated, and at the end of the day, you hear of only the chairman, every time chairman, across board. Now, why has this, again, it speaks, of course, to the collapse of the organs of political parties. But what can be done to ensure that those organs perform their functions truly? I know the guests, including yourself, have also made the argument about the transactional nature of political parties. That is to say, because, you know, funding is scarce and all of that. But isn't it also the case that political parties themselves, big or small, have not been sufficiently creative in raising revenue?
Yes, I think that's a major challenge. If you look at the way even labor unions are organized, you find that the position of organizing secretary is very key. Now, of course, when we talk about mobilizing, it's a different kettle of fish from mobilizing resources, mobilizing people, mobilizing money. And there are different ways these things can be done. Now, the common experience in capitalist society these days is that you find that the candidate's capacity to even raise money is considered very critical to the fortune of the political party. That is why, for instance, in the United States, the popularity of a candidate is often mentioned in terms of the kind of revenue it's able to mobilize over a period of time. But of course, we don't run that kind of system here, where you have people putting their money endorsing candidates. But what we have is a situation where political parties no longer depend on their members' subscription to raise funds, but more importantly, they now depend on candidates, you know, to bring money into the political parties. And that's why you find a situation where those who have money and are interested in occupying political positions go on to hijack the political party machinery, or where a candidate that has resources cannot where somebody that has resources cannot become a candidate, he is the one who wants to push somebody forward. But I think that there are creative ways through which this can be addressed. The first is that political parties, especially their leadership, as I said before, must look beyond the immediate, because they need the political party in order to be able to make a mark in the political arena. But what we have is that we have members who are literally begging these leaders for money. And given the situation of poverty in the country, it's a very difficult challenge as it is. But I think that when political parties become a government, they need to rethink the way the organization is run, because that gives them opportunity to begin to solidify and institutionalize political parties. But what has happened is that once people occupy position, they want to concentrate power within themselves, and there's need to therefore decentralize and democratize powers within the political party. And this will enable not just particular individuals to dominate political parties, but multiple individuals to contribute to the resources and fortune of political parties. And if that is the vision of the leadership of political parties, then they can begin to put structures in place and empower certain specific offices to become meaningful within the political party. But that's not what it is now. And when you look at the crisis that the political parties are facing, you will see that that is the only way, that's the way to go in order to begin to address this situation. A lot has to do with the orientation of party leadership. As one of the guests has said, a lot of training is going on, but what you find is that these training activities are often not attended by the big political parties, the APC and the PDP. if you go to I've been part of the training in NIPS for political parties, what you find is that it is the smaller parties that are usually in attendance. The big political parties think that they are too big and too powerful for them to be trained. And that is why they repeat history again and again. And I think the parties must begin to look at their organization, and even the leaders of political parties must be willing to learn and begin to see that the future of their political parties is tied, to the future of their political aspirations. And more importantly, it's also tied to the future of the country. Without strong and institutionalized political party, they won't be able to do well even in government. Yes, it's true that the different governments have different policies which we can trace to the manifestos of political parties. But it's important for us to continue to engage them and also engage civil society to help deal with the problem in political parties. But one important institution that we need to also talk about is INEC itself, because INEC plays a very important role in trying to address issues of strengthening political parties. It needs to connect with organizations that are willing to support political parties. It also needs to connect with a political party with its electoral institute, so that they can begin to reorientate political parties, especially their leadership, towards what we think political parties should look like in terms of their capacity to mobilize resources and also to connect with ordinary citizens and bring them into the party organ. And then, of course, strengthen specific organs within the political parties so that they can function and therefore decentralize or deconcentrate power from what it is currently. That will create some measure of stabilization within the political parties.
All right, thank you indeed. But gentlemen, I'm looking at this from another point of view when it comes to political party formation and, of course, the system of government that we are running. We are taking after the United States of America, for instance. When Trump came on board on the platform of the Republicans, he made it clear, that he didn't need any money from anybody. And in that system, usually they have fundraising. They raise funds officially, and everybody knows what the party has in the pulse before the campaign starts. But in ours, it's totally different. And again, no party can be run without funds. And when the people are not prepared to raise funds, to bring up their funds, and one or two persons who have garnered wealth say, fine, let's fund it. Would it not be natural, to ask the person to, of course, take the first shot when it comes to decision taking? I recall that in 1999, when the military paved way for political party system, many genuine wealthy persons in Nigeria were reluctant, in joining. Those days we used to have the people classified as 499ers or people whose wealth are not genuine and all of that, but they threw in their money in politics, and they got power. And some of them are still there. In fact, if they are not there, those that they have made through godfatherism are still there in power, right? So that is the issue. Now in Nigeria, fundraising issue, I don't know about that, but if it happens, I don't know how parties go about that. And in terms of training, I recall also in 1998, shortly before 1999, preparatory, for to launch political parties, I was involved in the coverage of a training organized by CJAP, which is of course a non-governmental organization, to train local government chairmen. And the persons who came along to who are political would have already been elected by then. They don't even want to listen to what we're talking about. Some of them have not had the exposure of political party system and what have you. But the issue is that, look, we put money here and we are going to get the money back. I accosted one of them. He said, look, this is business. The political party is business. You put in your money, okay? At the end of the day, if your candidate wins, you get back the money. So you were talking about training. Take that along.
Yeah, thanks very much, Karen. You see, as an institute, the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, is established primarily to strengthen legislative capacity and deepen democratic culture. And I think we are the only organization statutorily, charged with that mandate. So what we do is we train all legislators, national, state, local. We also deepen democratic culture, and provide, training to strengthen democratic, institutions. As I speak with you this morning, once I leave the studio, we have a meeting with the United Nations, for a meeting on a TOT, train the trainers, that is coming up very shortly. We identify, and, this is what is a bread and butter mandate. We train, we improve capacity, we do all of that. Now, it's important I stress that, you see, because, my DG was telling me, just last week, telling us last week that Zamfara State Governor, they came, just before the shutdown, we trained them. People send their legislative, the whole, state assemblies come to the institute, we train them. Sometimes we go over. The Cross River State has invited us to come and train. And you see, but the problem you raise, I think is also a problem that we need to address, that people don't want just to sit down, under intellectual, exercises and all of those things. But what we do is provide training, that is able to equip you, okay, to deliver on democratic, governance and strengthen your legislative.
Do you also train political party managers?
We do every, the whole gamut.
Do political parties send their members or their officers to you for training?
Yeah, we have a manual that is very comprehensive. We can train, once you are involved in governance process, then there's a training for you that is up for you. That's what we do.
Very briefly, very briefly.
Yeah, I think we need to just take, for instance, in the formation of PDP, the people who formed the PDP didn't become candidates of the party. Formation, 1999. President Obasanjo was not a founder of the PDP. He was in prison. So what happened was that you had people putting their resources together to form the party. But there's a hijack from that moment onwards, because we need to always understand that people come together and then these money bags eventually seize the momentum. The narrative needs to change, because we keep giving the impression that there's nothing that can be done about that situation. The people themselves, having seen, for instance, that governance is tied to the kind of political parties that you have. And if we are not getting the desired, what we want from governance, then we must begin to think in terms of how we can bring power from below to begin to challenge some of these things.
All right, that's why. Okay.
And that is the reason why some of the political parties that are ideological based prefer some of the people who have been there right from the beginning. So when they get into power, they will be able to exemplify what they actually learn about the party. That was why Gani ran for presidential elections, and that was why Abayuana too, as a chairman, ran. I didn't run for election until 2019, so that we can be able to exemplify, and we encourage members who are well-grounded in the knowledge of the party, so that they can really come into power and do what they're supposed to do.
We are really out of time. We don't have enough time to discuss some other issues, especially the issue of fundraising, which is where we don't have time for that. No, we don't have time for that anymore.
2 minutes?
2 minutes.
No problem. We'll give you 2 hours next time. All right, so on that note, gentlemen, we'd like to thank you all for being part of this conversation. I mean, it's a subject matter